Photographers always want to know about light, which makes sense because the word photography is quite literally the study of light. So I will be walking through lighting setups periodically, and the first one is one I've been using for about 8 years, and it is one that I know is expensive and takes a lot of space. So I'm just going to put that out there. I am aware, and I will cover other ones that take up less space and are less expensive, but it would not be genuine of me to skip past the one I have used the most in my career. I purchased all of this back in 2016, and I have been using it ever since. The reason I splurged on all of this is at the time I was working graveyards, and I was trying to also get my side hustle to make me some more money. However, since I worked graveyards and my studio was in a east-facing window room, that meant I only got light in the morning. So I would get off work at like 7, hurry and do like admin type stuff, whatever, prepare, etc., and then have a client come as early as they were comfortable with, which typically is around 10 o'clock. And then at that point, the light is starting to lose and is starting to diminish to the point where I wasn't comfortable or knowledgeable enough to take advantage of dimmer situations. And so I would have like 1 or 2 hours of light to work with, and then I'd have to work a little bit more and get ready for bed because I would have to sleep by like 2 o'clock, no later, to because of graveyard. So it was a tight window of opportunity, and if it happened to rain that day, I lost my chance of shooting, and I could only choose stock photography or portraits during my small window of opportunity light. So with all of that headache, I eventually said I have to invest in some lighting equipment that will let me shoot at any time of day. This is the solution I had come up with. I wanted to mimic the big window that I had in my room for my shooting room. My studio at the time was a living room with a large east-facing window. And I wanted to mimic that almost exactly, so that you wouldn't really know, other than the direction of light, what time of day it was, or that I was shooting with natural or artificial light, which is actually how my little natural versus artificial challenge started to happen on Instagram, because I got very comfortable at mimicking natural light with this artificial setup, and then eventually with other artificial setups. So I digress from that. Now I will show you the whole setup. I did give a little bit of story time because I have shown this setup many times before. So this is a longer form content, and I wanted to be able to share a little bit of why I went with this setup. Whereas like on Instagram stories and such, I don't really have the chance to give the whole detailed story. So here we go. So this is a 6.6 foot square scrim. I will attempt to link things down below where I can. However, like I said, I did purchase all of this in 2016, so I know for a fact like my flash, they don't make it anymore, the strobe I have back there. So I will do my best. This is a giant scrim, basically. Any giant scrim will do. You do not need it to be this big. However, like I said, I was trying to mimic a large window, which is why I went with a really large scrim. Big, soft light all day to look the same as soft light coming through the window. Now behind the scrim, we have the star of the show, the strobe. Pardon the mess. All of these backdrops and such, I do typically like to store behind the scrim and everything because they're just easily accessible yet out of the way, and they do not harm the light. If I had like a giant like red board or something, I typically wouldn't put that here. I do try to keep the profile pretty light, just in case there is some reflection of a little bit of a tint of color here and there or whatever, but generally not a problem. This right here is my baby. It is an Elinchrom VRX 250. Yes, 250. It is not very powerful. It did not need to be very powerful. I still don't think I need it to be very powerful. However, if I were to upgrade today, which will probably have to happen soon because this thing is a workhorse, but it has put in quite a few years, I would get probably somewhere around a 400 power, but The 250 did everything I needed it to do. We have the strobe. It is shooting through a shoot-through umbrella, right? A diffusion umbrella. So you can see my hand behind here. And then that light gets bounced off of a wall, right? A white wall. And then it comes back through that umbrella and hits this is where the scrim would be, right? It was right here. Before I moved it, it was right here. So it would hit this scrim here and then the subject on the other side. I could try and put up a little diagram if that helps. But the idea is you're bouncing and diffusing the light so much that once it hits your subject, it's really soft and it's spread out and even and very little shadows. It's very flat lighting, yes. However, there are ways for you on that other side to add more interest. But it is probably my favorite starting point. And for the portraiture I was doing when I started out, it's amazing. For headshots, it's actually really great. And if I needed a little more oomph, I would bounce the light back with a giant poster board on the opposite side of the subject, on the opposite side of where this light is coming from. I have used this so freaking much over the last 8 years, and it is still my favorite, all-time favorite setup. All right, I'm gonna put this all back and then we will talk pros and cons. Okay, pros and cons of this setup. Cons. It is large. This takes up a ton of frickin' space. It also requires you to have a wall to bounce off of. Even better is a corner. So I have it set up in the corner of the room where it is now, and it takes up a ton of space because not only do you have the 6.6 foot scrim, right? You have the legs that this is on, and yes, I could probably get like different kind of legs that take up some less space, but these are just your standard light stands, the big triangle kind, right? And so they take up an extra, what is that, 1.5 to 2 feet on either side. It is huge. This thing's massive. It takes up all the room. So yes, that's not ideal in a lot of situations. In fact, when I have had the privilege of renting out a studio space outside of the home, that is my biggest concern. Do I have enough space to set up my favorite light situation? Do I have enough space for that? Every other lighting setup, way less of a footprint. It's a lot to work with. So that is a massive con. And the fact that you need a wall, ideally a corner, another massive con. However, I have brought this on location without a wall before. I have used a big reflector situation, big whiteboards, big poster boards. I've used things like that where I could set up something to bounce the light off of, like, you know, like the V-flat boards. I don't have those specifically, but I have other poster boards. I have used giant reflectors. I have used flags that the studio maybe that I was renting from or whatever had on set with them. They've had big white flags. You put 2 of those together. So there were ways for me to fake a wall. I've actually faked a wall with 2 doors that I put together on a hinge, and I used that as the bounce off surface. The downside of that is you're limited to whatever size that is. Obviously you want the bigger space behind so it can bounce everything back through and take up the space, take advantage of the giant size of the scrim, right? So that is a con, having to have the big wall or a wall-like situation and the space to use this. Last con probably would be the price tag. This is not a cheap solution, though it is a beautiful one that I have used for 8 years and will probably continue to use. I will likely replace and upgrade my strobe at some point, but the strobe I paid a pretty penny for at the time has been worth it. It lasted me for all of these years. And I have worked that thing crazy to where it needs to turn on the fan and it is not shooting anymore because it needs to cool down. So I have worked this thing to death. It is amazing, but the price tag was a hefty one to start with. I had the job at the time that I was able to put the funds into this to do it. And I just hoped that it was worth it. The pros, it's flexible, it's stationary and always set up, because if you have the room for this, you're not going to be taking this up and down. I leave this up. It's ready to go at a moment's notice. Like if someone just wanted to walk in here right now, as long as I wasn't currently in the middle of something, I can plop them right here and take their headshot right now. If I wanted to segue quickly from shooting right here to shooting a flat lay right here, this light covers this whole area. I wouldn't have to change anything. So it is very flexible. It is large, and that is a good thing and a bad thing. So it's bad because it does take up a lot of space, but it's great because it's a big light source. It looks like a window light 24/7, and that is just amazing. It helped me tremendously when I was working graveyard shifts and I needed more time to be able to shoot, my stock photos and portraits at the, throughout the day without having to sacrifice one or the other. For me, the flexibility of being able to shoot anytime is amazing, and it's worth it. So that is a deep dive into this setup. I have, like I said, gone over this setup many times on different platforms and whatever, but I still get asked about it, and I did want to cover it with a little more backstory this time. So thank you for sticking around, and I will see you in the next one.